Hi, welcome to the video Spring Data JPA one-to-one mapping examples with me, Nam Hà from Code Hibernate. In this video, I'd like to share with you why one-to-one entity relationship and how to use Spring Data JPA to implement mapping for one-to-one entity relationship with shared primary key, how to map one-to-one entity relationship with foreign key, and how to map one-to-one entity relationship with join table. I will show you some code examples in a Java Maven project based on the following technologies: Spring Boot, Spring Data JPA with Hibernate ORM, MySQL, JDBC driver, and the software programs I used are Java Development Kit, JDK, MySQL Server, and MySQL Workbench, and Spring 2 Suite IDE. So what is one-to-one entity relationship, and when we need to use this kind of association? One-to-one entity relationship in a relational database is an association in which one row in a table is associated with exactly one row in another table, and we often use this kind of entity relationship to segment data in a single table into two separate tables for the ease of data retrieval and processing. Let's see an example. Here we have two tables, products and product details, and the entity relationship between these two tables is one-to-one, meaning that a product has only one product detail and a product detail belongs to only one product. You see, I have created a Java Maven project for a Spring Boot application, and you can see I used the dependencies for Spring Boot version 2.7.5, and I used Spring Boot Starter Data JPA and MySQL Connector J, which is the JDBC driver for MySQL. And this is the application properties file in which I configure the data source properties for the JDBC URL. You see the database on localhost with the schema name is testdb. Okay, and I specify the properties Hibernate DDL auto equal update. So when I code the entity classes, Hibernate will create the tables based on the entity classes. Okay, and this is MySQL Workbench, and this is a testdb schema. You see no tables at the moment. Now, let's implement the first kind of one-to-one entity relationship, that is one-to-one with shared primary key. Suppose that we need to implement a one-to-one entity relationship between products and product details. You see, in the products table, it has the primary key column ID, and in the product details table, it has product ID as the primary key column, and both these two primary columns share the same values. That's why it is called one-to-one with shared primary key. So in Java code used Spring Data JPA, we code the product entity class that maps to the products table in the database. And for the product detail field, we use the annotations one-to-one and primary key join column. And in the product detail entity class that maps to the product details table, in the product field, we use the annotations one-to-one, join column, and maps ID. Okay, now let's write the code here. Firstly, we create a new Java class for the product entity class that maps to the products table in the database. And note that I'm using Hibernate reverse engineering. That means I write entity classes first, and then Hibernate will create the tables in the database. So I use the entity annotation here and use the table annotation to specify the table name, mapping table name in the database products. This product has some fields like ID, name, and price, and a reference to product detail, which I will show you how to create later. For now, just generate getters and setters for ID, name, and price. Okay. Okay, and for the ID field here, we need to use the annotations ID and generated value with the strategy is generation type identity. And for the field name, you can use the column annotation to specify some constraints such as nullable equal false and maximum length is 200 characters. Okay, and then we create a second entity class product detail that maps to the product details table in the database. So we use the entity and table annotations. The table name is product underscore details. And in this product detail class, we also have a field that is a primary key column like this. And here we use a column annotation to specify the column name is a product underscore ID. And in this entity class, we define some properties, some fields, such as description, height, width, length, and width, and a reference to a product, and we generate getters and setters for all the fields in this entity class. Okay, you see. So then in the product entity class, we need to have a reference to a product detail, and to map a one-to-one entity relationship with shared primary key, we need to use the annotation one-to-one and specify the property mapped by equal product, which is the name of the product field in the product detail class here, product. And we specify the property cascade O, meaning that when we proceed a product object, it will also proceed the associated product detail object. Okay, then when we use the annotation primary key join column. Okay, and in the product detail entity class for the product field, we need to use the one-to-one annotation with join column. Name is product ID, which is a primary key column product ID here, and also use maps ID annotation. Okay, so that's the code for the entity classes product and product detail. And then to test the code, I create a new test class in the test package here. Product repository test. Before that, to use Spring Data JPA, I need to create an interface, product repository interface, and this extends the JPA repository interface. The entity type is product. ID type is integer. Okay, so yeah, this is a Spring Data JPA test, so we need to use some annotations like Data JPA test and auto configure test database with the attribute replace equal none, so it will run the test against real database, not with in-memory H2 database as default. And we use the rollback annotation here. So the test will persist data in the database. Okay, so I have a reference to product repository here. Report. Okay, and the first test method test add product. Okay, fail. Not yet implement. The test is failed by default. Okay, so now let me run this test. Hibernate will generate the tables in the database based on the code of the entity class here. Okay, now let me run the test add product. Of course, the test failed, and you can see it prints some SQL statements here. That means it created the table product details here. You see, with primary key is product ID, and create the products table with primary key is ID, and it add a constraint front key in the product details table of the product ID column that refers to the ID column in the products table. Okay, let me check in MySQL Workbench. You see two tables what created here, products and product details. Let me alter the table to see its structure. You see ID, name, price, and let's see the structure of the product details table. You see product ID, description, height, length, weight, width. Product ID is the primary key, and it also adds a front key constraints here. Alright, so far so good. Now let me write some test code to persist a product object associated with some details here. Product detail first. Detail equal new product detail. Detail set description. New iPhone in 2023. And detail set height 3.5. Detail set length 4.5. Height 1. Detail set width 3.5. Detail set width 5.2. Okay, we create the product detail object first, and then we create the product object, product equal new product, and then we set detail for this product. Set detail. We need to generate a getter and setter for the detail field here. Okay. Set detail, and set the name of the product. iPhone 15, for example, and set price 899. Okay, and then call the repose save method to proceed the entity object and product. Saved product, and for the sake of simplicity, we just assert that the saved product is not null. Okay, and run this test method. We got an error. We will also need to set the reference on the detail side, on the product detail object here. Detail set product. Okay, and run the test again. Okay, you see the test is now successful, and you can see it executed the insert into products table statement here, and also insert into product details table. Let me check in MySQL Workbench here. Select rows from products table. You see one row inserted, iPhone 15, ID 2, and also one row inserted in the product details table, and you can see the set values in the primary key columns, product ID and ID here. You see that means product is associated with only one product details, and product detail is associated with only one product. Next, let's see how to use Spring Data JPA to implement the second kind of one-to-one entity relationship, that is one-to-one with foreign key. Suppose that we need to implement one-to-one entity relationship between products and product details like this. Each table has its own primary key column, you see, and in the products table it has a foreign key detail underscore ID that refers to the primary key column in the product details table. So in Java code, in the product entity class that maps to the products table in the product detail field, we use the one-to-one annotation with join column annotations like this. And in the product detail table, we don't need to use any annotations, just declare the fields. Okay, let me show you the code in IDE. Code of the product entity class here. Code of the product detail class. You see, we just declare the fields ID description, height, weight, length, and width. No special annotations. And in the product entity class for the product detail field here, we use the one-to-one annotation and specify the attribute cascade equal all, and use the join column annotation. Specify the name of the join column is detail underscore ID, and specify the referenced join column. Referenced column name is ID on the product detail table. And that's it, very simple. And we use the existing test code. Okay, for now I just comment the code here, run an empty test to let Hibernate generate the tables in database. In database, I drop all the existing tables, so the database schema test DB is empty. You see. Now let me run this test method. Okay, you see, and it executed some SQL statements to create the product details table with primary key ID, create the products table with primary key ID, and add a foreign key constraint to the product table detail ID here that refers to ID column in the product details table. Okay, let me check in MySQL Workbench here. You see two tables created products. You see the table of products here as a primary key column and front key detail ID. Front key constraint here, you see it refers to the ID column in the product detail table. And this is a product details table. You see. Okay, now let me uncomment the code here to run the test that persists a product object into the database, and we'll also need to set detail. Okay, and run. Okay, successful, and you can see it executed some SQL insert statements, insert into product details table and insert into products table. Let me check select rows from products table. You see one row inserted detail ID 1, and in the product details table one row inserted, you see ID 1. So in this kind of one-to-one entity relationship with front key, the value of detail ID here can be different from the ID of the product ID because it is a front key, not shared primary key. Next, let's see how to use Spring Data JPA to implement the third kind of one-to-one entity relationship, that is one-to-one with join table. You know, we use join table if the relationship is not mandatory in order to avoid null values. For example, we need to implement one-to-one entity relationship with join table between products and details, and the join table is products details like this. There can be some products having some details, and there can be some products that do not have any details. So in that case, we need to use a join table in order to avoid null values. So in Java code, in the product entity class that maps to the products table in the database, we need to use the one-to-one and join table annotations for the product detail field like this. And in the product detail entity class that maps to the details table in the database, we just declare a reference to a product like this. Okay, let me show you the code here. Okay, so this is a product entity class. This is a product details class, and I change the mapping table name here to details. Okay, so in this product entity class, in the product detail field here, we use the one-to-one annotation with the attribute cascade equal or, and we use the join column annotation here to specify the name of the, we use the join table annotation to specify the details of the join table, with the table name is products underscore details. This is the name of the join table, and then we specify the join columns equal. We have only one join column here with the name is product ID, product underscore ID, and a reference column name is ID, which is the name of the mapping column of this ID field. And also we need to specify the reverse join column. Sorry, inverse join columns here equal join column. Name is detail ID, detail underscore ID, and the reference column name is ID, which is the name of the mapping column for the ID field in the product detail entity class here. Okay, and then in the product detail entity class here, we have a reference to product, and we use the one-to-one annotation with the attribute mapped by product. Sorry, mapped by detail. Mapped by detail, which is a field in the product entity class, and generate getter and setter for the product field. Okay, so that's the code for mapping one-to-one entity relationship with join table. Okay, now we need to write second unit test methods. The first one to add a product without details. Test add product without details. Just leave the test empty for now. And the second test is test add product with details. Now in the database is empty now, you see, no tables. Now let me run this empty test method to let Hibernate generate the tables based on the entity classes. Okay, done. And you can see it executed some SQL statements here to create the table details, table products, and the join table product details. And let me check the database here, the products table here. Sorry, on the table products table here with primary key column ID, and the details table here with primary key ID, and the join table products details here with two front keys. You see detail ID and product ID, two front keys here, you see. Okay, so far so good. And now let me write the first test method that add a product, proceed a product object without any details. So we just create a new product object like this without any detail. And product name is Google Pixel 5. Price is $349. And call repo save product. We can copy these statements. Okay, so in this case, we use the join table to avoid nav values because this product doesn't have any details associated. Now let me run the test method. Okay, then you see it executed a SQL insert statement, insert into products table. This product doesn't have any details. Products, you see one row inserted here, Google Pixel 5, and in the product details table, no row inserted. Products details table, no row inserted. Okay, and in the second test method, we test proceed a product with details. So we just run the code. Okay, done, and you can see it executed insert statements to insert rows into details table, products table, and the join table, products details. Let me check products. We have the second product, iPhone 15 ID 2, and in the details table we have one detail, ID 1 here. So in the join table, products and details, we have the values for detail ID is 1 and for product ID is 2. Okay, so far you have learned how to use Spring Data JPA to implement three kinds of one-to-one entity relationship mapping. I hope you found this video helpful. Please subscribe to my channel, like, comment, and share this video. Thanks for watching.